but for any eve of the 4th of July. I, Paul Harvey, do herewith bequeath unto you something to remember. You may not be able to quote one line from the Declaration of Independence at this moment. Henceforth, you'll always be able to quote at least one line. It's in the last paragraph where you will recall when I remind you. It says, "We mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor." In the Pennsylvania State House that's now called Independence Hall in Philadelphia, the best men from each of the colonies sat down together. This was a very fortunate hour in our nation's history, one of those rare occasions in the lives of men when we had greatness to spare. These were men of means, well-educated. 24 were lawyers and jurists. 9 were farmers, owners of large plantations. On June 11, a committee sat down to draw up a Declaration of Independence. We were going to tell the British fatherland, no more rule by redcoats. Below the dam of ruthless foreign rule, the stream of freedom was running shallow and muddy, and we were going to light a fuse to dynamite that dam. This pact, as Burke later put it, was a partnership between the living and the dead and the yet unborn. There was no bigotry, there was no demagoguery in this group. All had shared hardship. Jefferson finished a draft of the document in 17 days. Congress adopted it in July, and so much is familiar history. But now, King George III had denounced all rebels in America as traitors. Punishment for treason was hanging. The names now so familiar to you from the several signatures on that Declaration of Independence, the names were kept secret for 6 months, for each knew the full meaning of that magnificent last paragraph in which his signature pledged his life, his fortune, and his sacred honor. 56 men placed their names beneath that pledge. 56 men knew when they signed that they were risking everything. They knew if they won this fight, the best they could expect would be years of hardship in a struggling nation. And if they lost, they'd face a hangman's rope. But they signed the pledge. And here is the documented fate of that gallant 56. Carter Braxton of Virginia, wealthy planter, trader, saw his ships swept from the seas. To pay his debt, he lost his home and all of his properties and died in rags. Thomas Lynch, Jr., who signed that pledge, was a third-generation rice grower, aristocrat, large plantation owner. After he signed, his health failed. His wife and he set out for France to regain his failing health. Their ship never got to France, was never heard from again. Thomas McKean of Delaware was so harassed by the enemy that he was forced to move his family 5 times in 5 months. He served in Congress without pay, his family in poverty and in hiding. Vandals looted the properties of Ellery and Clymer and Hall and Gwinnett and Walton and Hayward and Rutledge and Middleton. Thomas Nelson, Jr. of Virginia raised $2 million on his own signature to provision our allies, the French fleet. After the war, he personally paid back the loans, wiped out his entire estate, and he was never reimbursed by his government. In the final battle for Yorktown, he, Nelson, urged General Washington to fire on his, Nelson's, own home, which was occupied by Cornwallis. It was destroyed. Thomas Nelson, Jr. had pledged his life, his fortune, and his sacred honor. The Hessians seized the home of Francis Hopkinson of New Jersey. Francis Lewis had his home and everything destroyed, his wife imprisoned. She died within a few months. Richard Stockton, who signed that declaration, was captured, mistreated, his health broken to the extent that he died at 51. His estate was pillaged. Thomas Hayward, Jr. was captured when Charleston fell. John Hart was driven from his wife's bedside while she was dying. Their 13 children fled in all directions for their lives. His fields and grist mill were laid waste. For more than a year, he lived in forests and caves and returned home after the war to find his wife dead, his children gone, his properties gone, and he died a few weeks later of exhaustion and a broken heart. Lewis Morris saw his land destroyed, his family scattered. Philip Livingston died within a few months from the hardships of the war. John Hancock, history remembers best due to a quirk of fate rather than anything he stood for, that great sweeping signature attesting to his vanity, towers over the others, one of the wealthiest men in New England. And yet he stood outside Boston one terrible night of the war, and he said, "Burn Boston, though it makes John Hancock a beggar, if the public good requires it." So he, too, lived up to the pledge. Of the 56, few were long to survive. 5 were captured by the British and tortured before they died. 12 had their homes from Rhode Island to Charleston sacked, looted, occupied by the enemy, or burned. 2 lost their sons in the army. 1 had 2 sons captured. 9 of the 56 died in the war from its hardships or from its more merciful bullets. I don't know what impression you had of the men who met that summer in Philadelphia. But I think it's important that we remember this about them. They were not poor men. They were not wild-eyed pirates. These were men of means. They were rich men, most of them, and had enjoyed much ease and luxury in their personal living. Not hungry men, certainly not terrorists, not irresponsible malcontents, not fanatical incendiaries. These men were prosperous men, wealthy landowners. They were substantially secure in their prosperity. They had everything to lose. But they considered liberty, and this is as much as I shall say of it. They had learned that liberty is so much more important than security, that they pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor. And they fulfilled their pledge. They paid the price, and freedom was born.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
You know, we should have as much dialogue and openness as possible. Have you felt the change in the tone and tenor of the feds out there? We certainly have. We used to could walk up to them and talk with the FBI agents in a friendly manner, unarmed and stuff, but the tenor has changed. They have become more hardened, and when they step out of their vehicles, now they're stepping out with their rifles, and they're not willing to engage in just friendly dialogue. And so, and then I'm assuming that you're aware of all the extra vehicles that they're bringing in and the increase in manpower that they're ramping up. And we're saying, why the rattling of the saber? Why, when we're so far away from anybody out here in the middle of nowhere, why are you ramping it up? Why do you fly your planes over nonstop? And why do you have your drones? Because they're droning this now. And they're actually flying their photographer planes. They're doing all the things. They're doing all the things that shows that they want to take some kinetic action against us. And we're saying, why be so unfriendly? Why be so threatening? Why are you threatening lethal force when we're so far away?
You really feel like they're ramping it up, that they're going to take some sort of, you said kinetic, like physical action?
All the behaviors is in the preparation of a campaign of some sort, and whether it's just a saber rattling to try to intimidate, or whether they actually mean it, we don't know. All we know is what we see. And so what you're also seeing is that's why you're seeing the uptick in the saber rattling from the feds, because they do not want to let go of this. They do not intend on losing here. And we do not intend giving it back to them.
Hi, we're here. We're here at the famous Alamo in San Antonio, Texas, and I'm excited to be here because this was a special place for Lavoie. He named one of our streets Alamo Lane, and then the street in which I live on is called the Line in the Sand. Brandon is here with me, and he can give us some history about the Alamo.
All right, well, this is obviously the battle in 1836. It took place between the Mexican army as well as the Texians at the time, what they were called. And the Alamo, the Texians were outnumbered on all sides, and despite the odds and knowing that they would face certain death, they stayed and fought for liberty, freedom, and our God-given rights. And they did perish in the end and died, but we went on to win the victory in San Jacinto, which happened shortly after.
So Jeanette, so why did Lavoie name the road Alamo and Line in the Sand?
Well, it's symbolic, really, of heroes, of men who stood for liberty and freedom for this country. In fact, one of his relatives was in the Alamo,
Really?
a Bonham. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. His grandma was Beulah Bell Bonham.
Yeah. And what's the significance of Line in the Sand?
Well, we always talked about I have to draw a line in the sand. So that's the significance, that I can't go past this point of no return here. Line in the sand.
The Lieutenant Colonel Travis told his men at one point when they were outnumbered and they knew that they were going to be facing certain death, he drew a line in the sand and said that anybody that wanted to cross that line and stand with him, they could, and the rest were free to go. And pretty much everybody there walked across the line and stood with him. So
that's amazing. We need to do that again today. We need to ask the people in America, where's your line in the sand, and are you willing to come and stand with us for liberty and freedom?
Welcome. I am here at the Harney County Resource Center, formerly known as the Malheur Wildlife Resource National Refuge, and it is now the Harney County Resource Center. This is January 15th, about 7:45, and it has been about 13 days since the Hammonds have been in prison unjustly. That was the match that struck the fuse that put a lot of this in motion, and so that is going to be forefront here in much of what we do. And it has been 13 days since we have occupied this as a peaceful place to work from, to restore our Constitution. What I'm going to do is, America, is I'm going to give you a daily update from the inside here of what's going on, what we're doing, and try to get the message out in another venue here. And so, I hope you understand what this is about. This is about all of America. This is about our Constitution. It's about requiring our federal government to return to the confines of the law, to deal with the things of the national level, to allow the states to deal with the things of the states and the counties to deal with the things of the county, to restore a Republican form of government. This land is special. This land needs to be free again. It cannot be free when our government has become lawless and they find no restrictions to their actions. They completely disregard the limits that we the people have put upon them, namely the Constitution. So we're requiring them to return to the confines of the law. Now, America, I want to speak to you a little bit more broadly. This fight is not just for the ranchers here that have been oppressed by the federal government in the destruction of their their way of life, the ranches, the logging, but it's about every American citizen. It's about those of you who love this land. It's about those of you on the West Coast, the East Coast. Believe me that they're already restricting your freedoms in major ways. They're limiting access to the land. Once they get the ranchers off, they will then get the hunters off, and then your access to freely move in this country, in this land, upon these public lands, will be more restricted. Now, every day I will bring to you, maybe several times a day, anything that I feel is breaking and pertinent. And so that's what I'll do. You can follow this here on my YouTube channel, and also probably on the webpage, One Cowboy Stand for Freedom. Maybe I could just go back and explain how the day it was that we got here and how it happened, because I was one of the first ones that pulled in here. We came up here on that day to do a peaceful support march for the Hammond family before they were thrown into prison, not once but for a second time for the same charges. And the hour before the rally, Hammond Bundy and pulled us aside with a group of residents, a group of people that came up to support, and he took the time to go through the litany of all the things he did to get redress for the Hammonds. And it was extensive and over a considerable period of time. And he was completely ignored. Had tens of thousands of signatures turned into Judge Grassi. Judge Grassi, simple comment, not to him, but to the world, was, "These are just crazies." Well, once the ability to get redress from our elected officials, this is what failed. This is what Ammon said. He said, and I'll paraphrase it because I'm just doing what I remember. He said, "I feel very strongly that if we allow to go unchecked this persecution of the Hammond family and do nothing about it, it will become the new normal for American citizens. So America, this is about your freedom, about having justice equal under the law." And he said that we have to do more than just hold signs and peacefully march. Those are basically my words. But he laid out the plan an hour before the march to say we need to come here and occupy this resource center, this wildlife refuge that the federal government has placed here. He said that this is the place of which they base out of, that they've used to destroy many of these ranchers and these ranching families. And that, so we left, I left with Ryan Bundy. Ammon did the march with Ryan Bundy and a handful of others, and we drove out here. And I want you to know that as we came out here, there was a lot of thoughts going through my mind. There's a term called crossing the Rubicon. None of the generals in Rome were to cross the river, the Rubicon, and go at the head of their armies. But when Caesar crossed the Rubicon at the head of his army, there's no turning back. And I thought to myself, I've not yet crossed the Rubicon. I've not yet walked in and seized this federal facility. And as I thought upon this, I says, once I do that, there'll be no turning back. And as I pondered, I was driving, I was the rear guard, and we went across this great flat of frozen water and snow. There up ahead was a bald eagle, a large, beautiful bald eagle sitting on the fence post, watching us coming. As we passed, it lifted off and flew. And I said to myself, this is not about cows and grass. It's about freedom. And so I crossed the Rubicon. I'm all in. And so it is time to require our federal government to return to the confines of the law, to uphold the 10th Amendment, to put the states, allow the states to function in their proper role, to allow the county governments to function in their proper role. And so,
oh, misty eye of the mountain below, keep careful watch of my brother's souls. And should the sky be filled with fire and smoke, keep watching over during suns.
We reject the
No, they're already here, and they're saying we're throwing off the Forest Service and the BLM, the Bureau of Land Management, will no longer be ruled by them. And so it got, this is pretty big. This is a big deal.
Watch the flames climb high into the night, calling out, Father, oh, stand by and we will watch the flames burn open on the mountainside. High. And if we should die tonight, we should all die together. Raise a glass of wine for the last time, calling out, Father, oh, prepare as we will watch the flames burn open on the mountainside. Desolation comes upon the sky. Now I see fire inside the mountain. I see fire burning the trees, and I see fire hollow in soul. I see fire, blood in the breeze, and I hope that you remember me. Oh, should my people fold, and surely I'll do the same. Confined in mountain holes, we got too close to the flame, calling out, Father, oh, hold fast and we will watch the flames burn open on the mountainside. Desolation comes upon the sky. Now I see fire inside the mountain. I see fire burning the trees, and I see fire hollow in soul. I see fire, blood in the breeze, and I hope that you remember me. And
greatest American patriots that you could ever come to meet.
Lavoy Finicum.
This is Lavoy Finicum. Lavoy Finicum.
This is a man who literally put his life on the line.
Let me explain how this works. L.A., capital V-O-Y, F-I-N-I-C-U-M. I'm a rancher in northern Arizona. I'm here to support the Hammonds. There's been a lot of words that have been said here. I see some eyes that started to kind of glaze over a little bit. Maybe I can bring it down to a little more emotional level or a human level. Coming. We're so glad you're here to help. Okay. And with this, BLM came in last year, fenced them off, and with this being fenced off, their ranch is much less viable. The Hammond family are human beings. They're individuals. They have loved ones. They have children, grandchildren. You know, this is real. This affects real lives. And so that's why we're here today. Each one of you here today are important. Individually, each one of you are important. Not collectively, we're talking about you as an individual, as a human being. Our founding fathers had escaped from tyranny. They believed in freedom. And so when they set up our government, they separated the powers, didn't they? And we all know what they are: executive, legislative, and judicial branches. We know those three branches of power. Well, what has happened to 1/3 of our landmass? Do you know the federal government owns and controls 1/3 of this nation? Let me put that in perspective. You need to put in the country of Germany, and put in France, Spain, Portugal, Italy, and better throw in Great Britain too. And then you're getting about the same landmass as what the federal government says that they own and control. And they say they have complete legislative power whatsoever. Keep us from having access to buildings, to have daylight shed on things. And so I personally believe, from one of the documents that I have seen, that there is great corruption here. You know, you ought to follow the money. There's great wealth that's locked up. On my ranch, particularly in Arizona, the greatest mineral wealth in the world is on that. And so why do they lock that off? And why do they keep those resources from the people? Myself as a rancher, my ranch is in northern Arizona. A bureaucrat behind the desk can write a statute regarding me, my ranch. It has the force and effect of law. This bureaucrat is not accountable to me. We have not elected him there. Now, if I get contrary to that statute, there's a federal ranger with a gun that can enforce that. And if it goes from there, I am brought into a federal court. Neither the law enforcement, the federal ranger, has been elected by us, the people here. They are not under the power of the recall. Neither the bureaucrat that wrote the statute, neither the law enforcement that enforces it, and now I am hauled into a federal court. All three branches of power under one head with no representation. Did we not, as Americans, face this issue some 200 years ago? Don't we remember that phrase? Taxation without representation. So now here we are, control without representation. 1/3 of our landmass. It's an empire within our own country. Unaccountable, unelected. The real power is in the bureaucracy. You know, it's about family. It's about my family. It's about the Hammond family. I've spoken to many ranchers in Utah, in Nevada, in Arizona. They are all feeling the same thing. They're all feeling this oppression that is coming down upon them. Their livelihood is threatened, being taken away. Their Hello everyone, this is Lavoy Finicum. I think I'm pretty upset this evening.